Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Samach Aleph above the comments we learned for Achim Kol Beis Yisrael and Asim Vatzev Shivya. Says the Mishnah in Samach Aleph. Avra Geder, talking about when you lit a fire. Presumably you lit a fire in your own property, and the fire spread. That's what we mean. The pasuk says that Kisei Tzayesh, the fire spread. You sort of started it, but it spread. That wasn't maybe beyond your control. It was possibly beyond your control. So he said, yeah, but if it went in somebody else's property, pasuk says you have to pay. Whether it consumed a stack or it consumed thorns, or even if it singed the field, it charred the stones, whatever, you have to pay. It's like we said yesterday, so it's like you shot an arrow. We'll see another opinion tomorrow that it's not exactly like your own power. But over here, the issue is when the fire spread and continued to spread, how far are you responsible? So the Mishnah says, and we're going to see another Mishnah on Beis, which is a continuation of this. Together, let's say it passed the fence, Shu Gavoa Dalanamas high. You couldn't have expected it to go that far. You lit a little fire here, you're having a barbecue or something, and the fire spread. Oh, there Harabma went over Shisarabma. It's a long distance, a wide distance of 16 amas. Oh, Nahar, it jumped over a river, you're putter. Hey, putter Avalasi, obviously you should be careful. Only you can prevent forest fires. But you gotta be careful. But if this is considered beyond your control, you jumped over a fence or across the river, you're putter. We had a brisa the other way, that if it passed over a fence that was far aside, you are responsible. You're obligated to pay. And our Mishnah said, the answer is that the truth is that if it's exactly 4 amas and it passed over the fire spread over a fence that's 4 amas high, you're really not responsible. I says over there chayiv. There he's talking about irresponsible, not including the 4 amas. In other words, our Tan is speaking about milamal lamata, going from above and below. Let's say it went over a fence 10 amas high or 9. That's for sure your potter. So he's saying shesh amas potter, shesh chamesh amas potter. He's going down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. There you're all potter there. Ad arba amos until 4 amas, including the 4 amas. Ad ba'ad b'chlal. If it's exactly 4 amas, you're potter. Tana brother, the other Tana, the Tana the Brisa, he's going from bottom up. Shtei amas, if it passed over a fence, it's 2 amas high, you're chayev. Shalosh amas chayev. Ad arba amas until 4, but not including the 4. The second Tana is going ad below ad b'chlal. It's not including it. Ad below ad b'chlal chayev. So the truth is, everybody agrees that if it's exactly 4 amas, you are potter. If it's anything above that, for sure, it's about 4 amas and above is potter. Until 4 amas, if it's 3.99 amas, then you're chayev. Amarava. Even if it's a field that had thorns, it's all thorns. They say you're still entitled to 4 amas above that, even though the thorns are something which catch fire easily. What we mean there is to say, not dalat amas including the kotzim. It means you have 4 amas. If it flew 4 amas above the edge of the thorns, the thorns effectively is like the fence. I feel the side of kotzim. In other words, if it's a field full of thorns, but it's got to go 4 amas above that to jump over for you to be considered potter. Now, this idea is that you're potter. Obviously, you might say, well, what kind of a fire did you spread? How much gasoline did you put on there, right? How big was it? So the Gemara is going to go on to us. So Rav's verse says, this that we say that you're entitled to, if it's 4 amas, if it flew over a fence as 4 amas high, is only if it's a fire that's like a rising column, like it jumped up and down. But if it's a creeping one, in other words, sometimes you can start a fire and it just creeps along and picks up a piece of grass here, picks up a piece of wood there, jumps around. The flame goes off and on. Even until 100 amas, as we'll see, even 100 miles, fire can go on forever, as we see with forest fires or fires where it's real dry. And as if a man lights a fire, it can go for hundreds of miles, right? So you chayev there too. He's only talking about a fire that's rising. It's not a fire that spreads around. Obviously, it depends on the case. Our Mishnah speaking about where it's a creeping one. Creeping one, you only chayev until it hits the fence. If it goes over a fence that's 4 amas high, or across Rosh Hashanah, or across a river, you're not responsible. That's considered an accident. He says if it's rising, If it jumped over it, if the thing just shot up in the air, that's considered an accident, even a little bit, even if it jumped over a fence by a little bit. But it obviously means it passed the gather, passed the fence at any height. At any height at all, you're potter there. That's what Shmuel's opinion is. But Tanya Kavah said, Rav, Brisa like Rav, Medvar Murmakalach is only when do you say that you have the 4 amos rule? Only if it's a rising column. But it's creeping. The eitzim mitzunsham, and there's wood there all along. Afilat may a mill, not 100 amos, but even 100 miles, or mill is really more than a mile. You're chayiv. You're chayiv because that you should have anticipated that. That's considered that you're responsible for that. It's not considered an accident. Over nar, if it passed over a river, shlulis or a pond, shem ches amos that are 8 amos wide, also you're potter. So when our Mishnah said potter on a nar, presumably means that also that the river has to be 8 amos across for you to be potter. Now we're not talking about height now, right? We're talking about going over a fence, we're talking about 4 amos above the shehu gavoa amos. The fence is dalet amos. So we said before, if the fence was made out of kotzim, which burn, then you need from the edge of the kotzim above 4 amos. But the Mishnah just said if it goes by a fence that's 4 amos high, if it passes that over, that's considered an accident. If it passes by a river, the river has to be 8 amos wide, or Rosh Hashanah, which is 16 amos up. Pardon?
So 4 amos and above.
Yeah.
For the kotzim. What is that?
No, he's saying even if it's he's saying like this. He's saying like this, that even if it's a field made out of thorns, right? A field of kotzim, so the whole field is full of thorns which are flammable.
Yeah.
So even there, see, I say, well, if the fence is made out of kotzim too, what have you accomplished? It all burns. The answer is you have 4 amos above that. In other words, if it flew 4 amos above that, if it didn't go above 4 amos above the top of the kotzim, then you're responsible because that should have been anticipated. But if it's a field made out of kotzim, presumably the fence is also kotzim. I feel the sort of kotzim. I feel also sort of shekofetzes. Rashi says, or in other words, the whole field is burning. You still potter if it's if you had a clear, you had a 4 amos above the thorns. If it flew above that, above 4 amos above that, then you would be potter.
So the fence is thorns.
Right.
But the fire went over 4 amos.
Either above the fence that's not made out of thorns, but I'm saying that even if the fence itself was made out of thorns and it jumped 4 amos above there, meaning above the top of the fence. That's what I'm saying. Maybe it wouldn't because it's burned. That's what I'm saying. If it's a fence that would stop it, and it jumped above it, so yeah, if it jumped 4 amos above, then you're considered potter. Rashi says, I feel because I feel like shekavetza lava or may alligator. May alligator goes above the fence. Malaya kotzim. It's because it's full of kotzim. Shenoch eish lebarga without potter. If presumably, if that's what the Gemara says, that Rav Papa said, misfas kotzim lamalat. You have to have from the edge of the thorns. You have to have a clear empty area of 4 amos for you to be potter. Yeah, Montana. Who is the Tatar? The Mishnah said derech harabim. Now it says if it passed derech harabim, what is the derech harabim? What do you mean, Montana? Amrava, Reb Lezer. We're going to see in the very next mission in a few minutes on Amid Beis. Reb Lezer Omer Sheishis Reyamos Kederech Rosh Hashanah. Is that what he means by that? Who is the author of this derech harabim? What do we mean? We mean Reb Lezer, who defines the next mission defines Tesainamis is Kederech Rosh Hashanah. So if it passes over Rosh Hashanah, presumably, and there we're not talking about height. We're just talking about if it goes across Rosh Hashanah, you are potter there too because you couldn't have anticipated that. Oh, Nahar or a river. We're at the first of the wide lines of the Gemara now. Rav Amar Nahar Mamish, literally a river. It's got to be a river though. Shmuel Amar Arisa Doy. It's got to be even a watering pond, like a little channel of water that they water the fields. Mother Nahar Mamish, we're talking about a really river. I forgot like a Maya. A river sometimes, like the Jordan River, is our places where there's very little water there. Even though there's no water there, you pass the river. There's a river bed there. There's a valley in there. So there, even if there's no water, if you say that it's the watering pond, if it's got water there, and if it passed over that water, you couldn't be held responsible. You figured that fire is not going to go past the water. It's not awesome. We learn in Mesechtes Peah Paya means you got to give a quarter of or a corner, not a quarter, a corner of your field for the aniyim. Now, let's say you have several fields. You have to give a corner of each one. So what is considered what's considered a field? Like, everything could be, all the earth is considered one big mess. No, the following things are considered a hefsek, a partition, to say this is the end of one field and that starts another one. You have to give a corner of each one. A nachal, you have like a valley, or a shlulis. Shlulis, we said before, is like a pond, or somebody's private path, or a public path. Now, although if your field has any of those bordering it, either a valley or a pond or a private path or a public path, then that's the end of that field. If you have another field on the other side, you got to give a corner of that too. My shlulis, what's shlulis? Amar Rabbi Shmuel, Malkum Shmeik Shamim Shol Sham. We mentioned it before. If the fire passed a river or a shlulis that are 8 amas wide, you are potter for the fire. So if Yehuda Shmuel says, what is considered a shlulis? Malkum Shmeik Shamim Shol Sham. It's a place where the water gathers. Rainwater just gathers there, probably like a little indentation, and the rainwater gathers there. Bibi Rabbi Yochanan says, it's amas hamayim. It's actually a channel of water. Shemachalekes shalal. The reason it's called shlulis is because it's a watering channel that spreads out, that divides up, spoils lagpei to its banks. In other words, it's a watering channel that's made to water the fields. So it's not simply like a haphazard little pond that gathers rainwater. If you say that it's a place where the water just gathers there, the rainwater just gathers there, certainly if you have a regular water channel that's made to irrigate the fields where you have constant water, there you would definitely be potter. And it would also be a separation for paya. We're talking here about what to give you the obligation to give a corner of your field. The one who says that it's a watering channel, but if it's simply a rainwater, a little pond that's created by rainwater, like an indentation in the ground that rainwater gathers there, that's not considered a partition for the chi of a paya. The hanu bagni the aramekri. These are simply called receptacles in the ground. They're not really called channels of water or rivers or valleys or anything of that sort. If you say that shlulis is simply a place that water gathers, so he'll say, if you say it's a place where water gathers, that's not in the Mishnah, fine. But the one who says that shlulis is really a watering channel, but if it's simply that's a separation. But according to him, simply a little indentation of the ground where rainwater gathers there is not considered a separation. Amalek, now this mission is a continuation of the previous one, as the next one will be also. Amalek Besocha, these are the last Mishnayos in the Perek. There's another Mishnah tomorrow about that, also talking about fire before we begin the new Perek. So Amalek Besoch Shalom, Ad Kama Tavrat Lake. So here, this Mishnah also is the continuation. We said, if you light a fire in your field and it jumps over a fence that's 4 amas high, or across a public place or across a river, you're not responsible. What happens if you don't have any of those things? It's one big plain. Everybody's got land over there. There's no fences. There's no rivers. Nothing. So how far are you responsible? I've got 8 million acres over here. I think I can light a fire here and not worry that I'm burning down somebody else's. So how far do you go? How far does the fire have to go for me to be responsible? And how much at what point can I say, listen, I got millions of acres here, no problem. So we have different opinions. You consider it as if you're in the middle of a base core. Base core, of course, is 30 saw. So we said before, this is like 75,000 square amas. And if you're in the middle of there, it's like 274 amas of each direction, something of that sort. So if you're smack in the middle of that and you light a fire, even if there's no fence and there's no river and there's no other, no natural partition, you're not responsible if it goes beyond that. So you consider it as if you're in the middle of a base court. If there's enough room in all directions, you're not responsible if it goes beyond there. This is the Rav Blazer we just quoted of an olive. No, Tesanam is just like Rosh Hashanah. There's nothing in the previous Mishnah we said if it passes by a Rosh Hashanah, you're potter. What's the deal about Rosh Hashanah? Somebody stomping it out in Rosh Hashanah? No, it's simply the distance. If it passes by an area where presumably Rosh Hashanah, you don't have wood and things like that hanging around. It's just a regular pavement made out of mud or asphalt or whatever, but it's Tesayin Amos wide. That's 16 Amos wide. That's good enough. Here also, if you have 16 Amos in any directions, you don't expect it to go beyond that. Rabbi Kiva Amar Chamishim, you got 50 Amos. You need 50 Amos. If it's less than 50 Amos and it spreads, you're responsible. Rav Shimon Omer, and we're going to see the psak like Rav Shimon. This sort of summarizes both these mishnayos. Rav Shimon Omer, Shalom Yishalim Hamavir Esa Be'erim. The one who starts the fire has to pay for it. Hakol Lefi Adleika, depends on the fire. Now Rashi says over here, the last Rashi in the Mishnah says, Kasal Kedat L'Rasim B'Yirachik Kamer. Hakol Yishalim Kol Kama Shehidlik Bein Rachok Bein Karov. You probably assume it means this: whether you lit the fire nearby or far away, you're always responsible. Sounds like even if it's hundreds of miles away, you're responsible. That's what it sounds like. Hakol Lefi Adleika Bein Rachok Bein Karov. That's what it sounds. That's the Havamim of the Gemara. But we're going to see it's not exactly like that. It says the Gemara. So what does Rav Shimon say? You're responsible for anything? You're always responsible no matter how far the fire went? Lest Rav Shimon Shiur, does Rav Shimon not hold up measures? There are measures that you're responsible only till so far. That's considered good enough of a precaution. But lest Rav Shimon Shiur, but like it, does he not hold up measures when it comes to fire? By the time we learn, Lo Yamid Adam Tana B'toch Habayis, you shouldn't set up an oven, a permanent oven, in a house. Elam Ken Yesh Al Gabo Govadal Aram. So as people live upstairs, you can't put a oven, especially in wooden houses or whatever, even in stone houses. You can't put it too high up on the near the ceiling that it's going to bother the person above you. You shouldn't set up an oven, Elam Ken Yesh Al Gabo, unless there's Govadal, unless there's 4 amos clear between your oven and the ceiling, because it's going to bring heat or cause a problem to people upstairs. If let's say you had it upstairs, you have to have a layer of cement of 3 tvachim between the oven and the ceiling and the floor, which is really the ceiling of the guy below you. You have to have at least 3 tvachim of cement there, protecting it. So you see there are measures. Ubekira, if it's only like a portable stove, like a small one, tefach, that's good enough. If it's a small one, a tefach of cement between your oven, between your kira and the floor, which is the ceiling of the guy below you, that's good enough. Vim hizik, misham kamash hizik. And if you did, these are the rules. These are the rules. The rules are that you got to have 4 amos above the oven, 3 tefachim below the oven, with the kira 1 tefach. Despite that, if it did damage, even though you took this precaution, the Tanakama seems to say you're chayiv anyway. If you should, maybe you set it on 500 degrees instead of 200, whatever you did there. A fire couldn't set things in those days; you just set the fire. But still, if it did damage, you're responsible. Rav Shimon Omer, Shimon says no. Lo nemer shiur nalalo elishim izik potter milashalim. What's the whole point of saying these shiurim? Just say if you have an oven in your house, you're responsible for any damage it does, period. What's this business about 4 amos and 3 tvachim and 1 tefach? Rav Shimon says if you're listing measures, the point of the measure is to absolve you if you took that precaution. You did everything you could, that you should be potter. So you see Rav Shimon holds up shiurin. So what do you mean he doesn't hold shiurin? Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Barabua, hakol lefi gova hadleik. That's what he means to say. He doesn't mean to say that there are no shiurim for distance away. He means to say, what does Rashi say here, the last Rashi in this piece of the Gemara before the next Mishnah? It depends on the height. I'm saying if it's a regular low-lying fire, then these different shiurim might work. Chamishim amma, tesayin amma, a base core, middle of a base core, you can have all that. But if it's a rising fire, if it's very high up, then it depends on the fire. Once the fire is very high up, it can spread very easily, and you'd be chayav there too. Like it depends on the height. So yes, these sure might be for a low-lying, creeping fire. But if the flames are shooting high up in the sky, a rising fire, then it depends on the fire. Depends on the fire.
No matter what the building code.
Yeah, no matter what the building code is, right. So we go like a Shimon, that it really depends on the fire. If it's a low-lying fire, then the shiur may work out. But if it's a high-rising fire, it all depends. And obviously, it also depends if you committed arson. If there was intent there, then you'd say if you can prove arson. That's always a problem proving it. You can usually tell by the empty gasoline, tubes or whatever. Amadlik is a goddess. Now we come to the machlokas Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan that we've discussed. If you lit a fire in your property and it went on somebody else's property and did damage, you're responsible. Whatever you should have done the precaution. Of course, unless it jumped over a river or something like that. But those exceptions, you just lit a fire in your property and went on the others, you have to pay. Everybody agrees on that. Machlokes is, what if something is hidden in there? The other guy hid his cash under his stack of wheat. And he said, okay, I'll pay for the wheat. It's my fault. I didn't know you had $100,000 in cash there. So that's the machlokas Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan, which we discussed yesterday. The Rabbanan learned from hakama, from standing. It's got to be something that's visible, exposed, not something that's hidden. Rav Yehuda doesn't darshan. He uses a kama for called bali kama, anything standing like animals or standing grain or anything like that. He doesn't mean to exclude that. So here, Amadlik is a goddess. You lit somebody else's stack, and there were some utensils, clothing, whatever, kalim inside, Vidoku, and they were lit up too and destroyed. But you don't this is, you got to pay for everything. You got to pay for everything. You're responsible. It's your fire. You only pay whatever it was. If it was a pile of wheat, a stack of wheat, you pay for the wheat. If it was barley, cheaper, you pay for the barley. Then now we have this case that we mentioned several times. Let's say there was an animal, like a goat, tied to the barn where you lit the fire. It was tied up there. Or Evet Samachlo, or there was an Evet Kanani who was nearby there. The Nisraf Imo, and they also, God forbid, got burnt together. You're chayiv to pay. You're chayiv to pay. Now, what are you chayiv to pay for? You're chayiv to pay not only for the damage that you did to the stack of wheat or barley, whatever, but you also have to pay for the animal because you killed the animal's worth $100. You got to pay for that too. What about the Evet? The Evet should have run away. I didn't kill the Evet. He was standing there. You see a fire, you run away. If he had the ability to run away, then you should have run away. So you have to pay for the damage you did, meaning for the goat, if it's a case of a goat, or for the wheat. Evet, kafaslo, vikdi samachlo. Let's say the Evet was tied up over there, and you lit a fire, you killed the Evet, right? Because the Evet was tied there. He had no means of escape. You killed him. Or gedi samachlo. Some of the gears said, oh, gedi samachlo. Or there was a gedi that was nearby with the idea that the gedi is not smart enough to run away. Right, so you'd be chayav for that, then it's remote, but you're potter for paying for everything. You're potter for paying for the stack. You're potter for paying for the gedi. Why? Because you're chayav misa for killing the Evet. Can't kill an Evet. So therefore, if it comes to you, chayav for killing the Evet. Even though there was no Adam and Asra, it must have been Adam, otherwise we wouldn't know that he killed them. But there was no Asra, so you're not chayav. Rashi means afilu lo hisrabo she'ein an erag, even though you're not killed. The kaim alone, the chayav misa shogin your potter because kam le'rabminei. Right, because you're chayav for the bigger sin of killing the Evet, you're potter for paying for the monetary damage that you did. Umodim chachamim. Some have the girsa that it's gedi, that the gedi was that it goes together. How you gedi kafslo ve'evet samachlo. Or some of the girsa it's gedi. Why? Because the gedi should have also run away. The question is, does he have the gedi? Rashi says if gedi lo shani main couples. The first Rashi is the difference if he's tied up or not, because the gedi doesn't have the brains to run away. So therefore, even if he's not tied up there, you're responsible to pay for him, unless you're put to pay because of the Evet, because you killed the Evet, and therefore you're not responsible for any monetary damage. The gedi is considered a monetary damage. And some say, the Ikanami Rashi says, he's going to run away. If the Evet was tied, gedi samachlo, or the gedi, or that there was no Evet, but the gedi was nearby. Your potter, the afagav, the posha, right? Whatever he goes on, Rashi goes on to explain this, but the idea is that the gedi nami dafka get samach potter because he should have run away. But so it's Evet kafaslo, gedi samachlo, then your potter because he should have run because he should have run away. So you're potter for killing the gedi, even though he could have run away, but There we go. So ogedi samachlo, you're potter, right? You're potter because he should have run away, so you're potter for him anyway. But the real point is that you're potter on the gadish on the stack because you're chayiv misa for killing the evid. Umodim chacham back in the Mishnah chacham Rav Yehuda the madlik esavira. Let's say you lit a building, a barge building, big dog, a tower, a castle, or something you like. Shumasham komash. Even though the Rabbanan said you're not chayiv, if a guy hid his money under a stack in the field, yeah, but if you lit his house, you burned his house down. Well, you shouldn't include the stuff that's in the house, even though it's not exposed, of course. Because people leave their stuff in the houses, right? People leave their stuff, so then you are responsible for what's inside the house. That's normal to do. Now, the question the Gemara is going to deal with is we have machlokas again. Based on machlokas and Rabbanan, are you chayav for Talmud for something that's hidden or not? That's the basic idea. But we said the Marmoda Shavuda, if you burn somebody's house down, that there's people keep things in their house, you're responsible for that too. Amar Kana. Machlokas b'madlik b'toch shelo b'holcha b'ochla b'toch shachberet. Machlokas is if I lit a fire in my property and went over there and went to the other guy's property. Rav Yehuda says you're chayav on things that are unexposed, things that are hidden. Rabbanan patri. The Rabbanan say you're patur on unexposed items, right? Based on kama, right? And it's got to be something that's visible. But if you lit something, if you lit the other guy's field, you didn't. The machlokas is if I lit it in my field, it went over there, the other guy's field. But Rabbanan say you're patur on Talmud on something that's hidden. Rav Yehuda says you're chayav. But let's say I lit somebody else's field directly. Everybody agrees you have to pay everything inside. But wait a minute. The Mishnah said if you lit somebody's house, if you burned down somebody's castle, their house, then you'd be chayav for everything inside. These things don't seem to go together. Amalei Rabba, if that's the case, why did the Mishnah say Adatani Seifa? Why did we learn in the Mishnah at the end? That if you lit the house down, let's say a house, you pay that because inside. People leave stuff in the house. Let's listen to them. Make enough kamina between if I lit it in my field or his field. Why did you have to say? You're saying now that if I lit the fire in his field, even a chamer moda, then I have to pay for everything. If I lit it directly in his field. So I talk about if I burnt his house down. Talk about if I burnt his field. Right? Listen, make enough kamina in the field. More when do you say that the chum say you're patur on taman? If I lit it in my field, and it spread to his field. But if I lit it in the other guy's field, what do you talk about his house? Just say even if I lit it on his field, I also chayav there too, not the house. If I lit it in his field, I'm chayav there too. Elo Marava, there are two things there. Betarti pligi, there's two machlokas over here. Pligi b'madlik b'toch shelo b'holcha b'choch b'toch shel beiro. They argue if I lit it in my field and I went into his field, Rabbi Yehuda machayev ataman be'eshchim says you chayav and things that are hidden in there too. But Rabbanan savi lo machayev, you're not chayav on taman. And they also are pligidami b'malik shel chavero. If I lit in somebody else's property, Rabbi Yehuda savar misham kol mashabatocho says you pay everything. Vafilu arniki, you pay for everything in there. Presumably, Rabbi Yehuda would say that even in the first case too, if you lit it in my field and it went into your field, you're chayav even for cash, even your purse. But Rabbanan savri, the Rabbanan say if I lit it in my field, right? If I lit it in my field and I'm sorry, if I lit it in the other guy's field. If I lit it in my field, I'm patur on tamid. But if I lit it in the other guy's field, then I'm chayav on tamid. But what am I chayav on? Things that a person would normally keep in his field. Things that normally people would hide under the pile. Kagon, farming tools. Kagon marigan. That's called like a threshing sledge. Clay bucker, harnesses for the for the animals. Huda mishalim. But things that I don't normally keep. People don't usually keep cash into their stock, their stack of grain. Lo mishalim. So yes, the Mishnah says if you burn somebody's house down, you got to pay for everything in the house. People keep everything in their house, cash, everything is kept in the house, right? But here the machlokus is in the Mishnah. The difference is this: if I live in my property and went into his property, so the Rabbanan say you're patur on anything that's hidden, anything. I'm only chayiv on what's visible, not what's not exposed. If I lit it in mine, if I lit it in his, then I am responsible. That's what you need to say. If I lit it in his field, then that's what the Rabbi says. But if I lit it in somebody else's field, then the Rabbanan say you're chayiv also, but only what? Things that are normally kept there, but not cash, not diamonds, not expensive stuff, or clothing even. People don't keep clothing under the stock of grain. People might keep their tractor, their shovels, farming tools. That's what they would keep there. That's the machlokes. Han Rabbanan, hamadlik es hagodish. 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Hamadlik es hagodish. You burnt down somebody's stack. Vayubo kalim, and there were utensils in there, clothing, whatever. The doku, and they burnt down. Rabbi Yehuda Mishalim Kol Mashaya B'Toko. Rabbi Yehuda says you pay for everything inside, just like the son of the Mishnah. You pay only for what was exposed. It was a stack of wheat or a stack of barley. What about the place that the kalim took up? You had a stack, but it covered over the tractor or whatever, the threshing sledge, whatever it was. So what do you do over there? So at least you should pay for, if there was barley there, that hollow space taken up by the farming tools. You say you don't have to pay. Chum say you don't have to pay for farming tools. Again, we're talking here where did you light the fire according to what Rabbi just explained? You lit the fire in your property, and went onto his property. You only pay for what's exposed. We said, according to Rava, that if you lit the fire on his field, you are responsible for what's unexposed if it's stuff that normally people would keep out in the field. So here when the Chum say, so what about the kalim? No, you don't pay for the kalim because you lit it in your field. You see the place that the kalim took up, you light this as if it's full. So let's say that there was a stack that looked like there was 100 bushels of barley. That's what the stack looked like. And the whole thing burnt down. But he says, wait a minute, I had some expensive farming tools inside. There were only 90 bushels of grain. And the area that 10 bushels would have taken up had farming tools. You just have to pay for 100 bushels of grain. You don't pay because that was, you did burn something. You did burn the kalim down, but you have to pay for the kalim. You pay for as if there were bushels of grain. When do you say that? Again, only when you lit the fire in your property, where the Rabbanan say you're potter on Tamun, but you pay as if the whole stack was full of whatever grain it was. But if you lit it in the other guy's field, you lit up his field, you started a fire in his field, and they're called Mashal takes it, I believe, and Rashi seems to have it. They're called Mashal Kol Mashal B'Tocho. You pay for everything that was inside, assuming, right, that it was kalim that you normally leave there, farming tools. You pay Misham Kol Mashal B'Tocho. Then everybody would agree. Umoda Rav Yehuda. So there, the Rabbanan Moda that if you lit somebody else's field, you pay for everything if it was farming tools. Whereas according to Rav Yehuda, you'd pay even for cash and jewelry, etc. Umoda Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda's one of the Chamim. The Masha, listen, Rav Yehuda who says what you pay even for the stuff that's hidden. Let's say it wasn't a case where I simply did damage to somebody else. I said, you know what? You want to leave your stuff here, your grain? You can leave it in my field. I'm lending you my space. I'm not going to charge you rent. I'm lending you my space. You can keep your stuff there, and I'll keep an eye on it. I said you can make a stack here of grain, the higdish, and you put a stack of grain, the hikman, and then you hid some stuff underneath there. Even Rabbi Yehuda's mother, the Rabbanan she'ein mashal el demei garish provide. You only pay for the grain, even if you hid farming tools or anything else in there, because that's what I agreed to do. Rashi el demei garish imhiviru ba'al sada the lo kibul le'el through sugash. I'll watch it. You want to put your stack of grain there, fine. But if you want to hide stuff underneath there, I'm not responsible for that. Similarly, goes on. Let's say I lent you space. I lent you space to stack up wheat, higdish sorin. And you put barley there. Okay, I don't care if it's wheat or barley. I'll guard as barley. Or sorin higdish. Or I lent you space to make a stack of barley, which is cheaper, and I'll keep an eye on barley. And you put wheat up there, or you put wheat there, but chipa and so on, you covered it up with barley on the outside, or sorin b'chitin. You only have to pay for something because that's all I agreed to guard. That if I told you you want to put your barley here, you can put your barley here, and you put your barley here, I'm responsible for the barley. If you put wheat there, which is more expensive, I'm not responsible for it. Even if you put in barley and covered it with wheat, I'm not responsible for that. If you put wheat and covered it with barley, the whole thing looked like barley, there you're certainly putter for that. So Rav Yehuda's motive, Rabbanan in certain cases, and Rabbanan motive, Rav Yehuda in other cases.
Why would it be different Rabbanan, whether it mites in zone field or in the other,
Because there's less responsibility. In other words, when the Torah says "kama," that the Rabbanan darshan that to mean exposed, right? Exposed. That's if you light a fire, ki aver ish, right? What's the ki seitze ish? It went from your field to his field. So you're only responsible for exposed it. But if you lit it in his field, it's not ki seitze ish. It's not like the fire just went out. You lit it in his field. You lit a fire in his field. There's more responsibility there. That's his point. That the tour of Taman is only when there's less responsibility. I put it in my field. Ki seitze ish. The fire went out, spread from my property into yours. Then there's a heter for something if it's for Taman that you're not responsible for that. But if I lit it in yours, then it's not ki seitze. It's you lit the guy's field up. You're more responsible.
Is that both times or the knas?
No, it's for sure necessary. You pay full value. There's no knas, it's full value. It's considered what's considered damaging.
You get off if it's from your own property.
No, if it's from your own property, from your own property, for sure you're not responsible. What's the rules of response? Just like you're not responsible if the fire went beyond a certain thing. It's considered an accident. It's considered an accident. The Torah calls that an accident. But if it went under normal conditions, if you lit a fire here and it would normally spread, then you're responsible. That's considered damaging. If it was an accident, like it went beyond over a river or something, then you're putter. If it's considered the tour of Tamun is also like an accident. I'm not responsible for that. It's like, what are your limits of responsibility? I'm not responsible for this. I'm responsible for that. So I'm not responsible for Tamun because the Torah parted me from Tamun. Rav Yehuda doesn't darshan it that way. He says you are responsible for it. That's considered direct damage. It is damaging, right? Your fire is damaged, right? The question is, where's their tour for? I'm not responsible for that. I don't think it's a knas. It's not a knas. It's a damaging that damages that you're responsible for, damage that you're not responsible for. All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow from Rav Meir. Have a good day.